Good evening, everybody. Today is Friday, September 19th. And no, your eyes do not deceive you. It is true. I shaved. And apparently, people tell me that I should keep it this short. So, let me know if you like the look or don't like it. I don't know. It may stay around, it may not. First things first, I always start by giving you an update as to where things stand right now and what I've done in the week. I got to participate in a rally in front of the United Nations this last Monday, and that was being done by people like, here we go. Here's a picture of me in a suit, of all things. Um, this was me at the United Nations rally. That's Rafed Al Jabouri, part of the Integrity Political Action Committee. Then next to him is Garland Nixon, one of my favorite podcast commentators. And then we have Tony Aguilar here on the left with the NKUSA folk on the right. And this was just a clip, which I'll come back to that clip in just a sec, of me on the Jimmy Dore show, where I said that I think Richie Torres is just mentally unfit to be in office. Now, we were out there in front of the United Nations in support of Resolution 377A. This allows the General Assembly, in cases where the Security Council, like we saw yesterday, where there was a vote presented to the Security Council for there to be a complete ceasefire and for Hamas to withdraw all the hostages. And what happened? 14 nations voted for it. One voted against it, and that was our country here, the United States. They voted against it. And God, they vetoed it. This is a case where Resolution 377A could be enacted and step in and say, listen, the Security Council has messed up too many times. The General Assembly will now vote on this. That is why we were out there pushing this. And so I was proud to be out there with Josephine Guilbeault. I was proud to be out there with Tony Aguilar. Another thing that I did was I actually brought Tony Aguilar to the Bronx, of all places. I brought Tony Aguilar to the Bronx, and I'm trying to get this photo now. Here we go. I know he looks a little scared to be standing next to me. There were other pictures where he was smiling, I promise. They just didn't look as good. This was the best one that we could do, and that I chose. But I brought him up to the Bronx. This man has been in Gaza. He was a contractor for the Gaza Humanitarian Fund, and he has seen atrocity. He saw the crimes that the Israelis were committing. And what he did was he blew the whistle on what he saw. He talked about the children that were being shot. He talked about the aid distribution sites being places where the soldiers were using the kids and people coming as target practice. And as a result, people were killed. And I brought him to the Bronx because one thing he had said in the intervention he did, where he stood up recently, you may have seen this, where he stands up and he starts going at the person at a confirmation hearing. He says, what they're doing over there, they're going to do over here next. And taking him around the Bronx, we drove around the Bronx, and I was able to talk to him about the conditions of this place. I told him why it was the poorest congressional district in the country. I told him about the fact that we just lost a school, All Hallows Catholic High School, a school that had a 100% graduation rate. And we lost it. It was near Yankee Stadium in the South Bronx. The parents fought hard for it. Our congressman didn't. Our elected officials didn't. But the parents did. And sadly, it was a fight they couldn't win. I tried to help him. I tried to do a few things, and it wasn't successful. But I told him about the hospitals that were shut down, the schools that were shut down. I told him about the facades of buildings that were collapsing. He said, there are buildings that are collapsing in the Bronx. I said, yes. People who live in mold. I told him the horrible conditions. And he said, see, this is what I meant when I said that what's happening over there is going to happen here. It's not going to happen in the form of tanks. It's not going to happen in the form of jets. It's not going to happen in the form of soldiers. It's just going to be this benign neglect, this horrible, just indifference. And so to be able to bring him here and for him to have that discovery was honestly, it was very meaningful to me, because the same policy that has enacted a genocide in such an accelerated, horrible way in Palestine is the same policy that is taking place here in the Bronx And here in the country and the rest of the other poor parts, they're just expressed differently. But the genocide that's happening here in the Bronx is a slow burn genocide, poverty and misery. And the one that's happening in the Gaza is Reaper drones, missiles, it's tanks, it's destruction. And we're just seeing the same thing play out here in a much slower motion. This is what I do when I talk to people in the streets. I have to relate it to them, and people get what's happening in Gaza. People get what's happening in Palestine, and they're even more awake. They're even more more aware of what's actually happening when you compare the policy between over there and over here. And so, which brings me to the state of our country right now. Like many of you, I saw the Charlie Kirk assassination, and I couldn't sleep for a few days after that. Not because I thought Charlie Kirk was some bastion of free speech. I disagreed with a lot of what he had to say, and I am not going to put him on a pedestal and say he was some great man. He wasn't. He had called Muslims stupid. He had said a bunch of racist things. It was wrong, a lot of what he was espousing. But Max Blumenthal and Candace Owens have been reporting recently that there was a shift in TPUSA, that there were pressures from donors for him to not be so critical of Israel anymore. And supposedly Netanyahu had offered a $150 million injection into TPUSA. And apparently Charlie Kirk rejected it. Then he had hosted something in the Hamptons asking for people's opinions, in which he was yelled at for even thinking about criticizing Israel or even thinking about criticizing Netanyahu and the Netanyahu regime. So what we're seeing play out with Charlie Kirk, if it's true, of course, what's being reported, which I'm inclined to believe it is, what we're seeing was a man who was combating forces within his own organization and the people who were sustaining it. Who were trying to get him to be more and more pro-Israel. And what we saw was Charlie Kirk battling his conservative audience, who was losing the line on Israel, who was losing the line on Gaza, and they were becoming more and more supportive of Palestinians and becoming more aware of the Israeli influence in our country and British influence in our country. And they decided to just start questioning things. So Charlie Kirk was battling that, and he was battling his own conscience. We saw him, on the Ben Shapiro show just 2 days before he was assassinated saying, the media has lied to us about COVID. They've lied to us about the war in Ukraine. They lied to us about Russiagate. Can I ask the question, are they lying to us about Israel as well? And that was his last media appearance he did. Now, does this mean I believe that Israel was the one who killed Charlie Kirk? Honestly, I don't know. There are a lot of holes right now with who killed with the guy, Tyler Russell. Is that his last name? Tyler, I got to look at Tyler Robinson, excuse me, not Tyler Russell. Tyler Robinson. Right now, Candace Owens released an image of him at a Dairy Queen at 6:38 p.m. Mountain Time, 6 hours after the shooting. There was just only 15 minutes away from the area of the shooting. He's refusing to plead guilty. Apparently the text messages were reproduced, and they were not, we don't have timestamps for the text messages between him and his roommate, who even then that relationship is completely ambiguous as to whether or not they were lovers, they were just roommates. It's totally unclear, and it's supposed to be unclear and ambiguous because it doesn't necessarily matter who pulled the trigger. We know that the people who had vested interest in keeping Charlie Kirk and TPUSA pro-Israel jumped all over it and immediately refused to let a tragedy go to waste. What did they do? Netanyahu released 4 statements talking about how he didn't kill Charlie Kirk and how Charlie Kirk was a bastion. He was for a free Israel. He was supportive of the Israeli people and the Israeli state. That's what Netanyahu said in the first minutes of Charlie Kirk being assassinated. And, they're not letting this go. They're trying to use this as a way to galvanize more support for Israel. But obviously there's much, much worse aspect to this, which is the strategy of tension. the Operation Gladio style attacks that we see happening domestically right now. Um, you know, there was this, when I say strategy of tension, I refer to a period in Italy in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where after World War II, NATO and the British led operations to create sleeper cells in Europe from former Nazis to go and commit terrorist acts, to infiltrate leftist or right-wing groups, to then carry out assassinations in these intergroups, to create a period of tension which would lead to more fascist crackdowns in Europe. And we're seeing that now. I'm supposed to believe that the FBI doesn't know who Tyler Robinson was before this happened. We pay so much money to the NSA and to Palantir for them to surveil and monitor supposedly for domestic and foreign threats. And I'm supposed to believe they didn't know that this was talked about? We know from people like Edward Snowden and others that anytime somebody says something that could even be remotely interpreted as a threat to another individual, especially one like Charlie Kirk, I'm supposed to believe they didn't know something was happening or something was being planned. And we know there were other co-conspirators in this too. We know supposedly he picked up the rifle from somewhere. It was given to him, although now I'm hearing that it was actually his grandfather's rifle. We know that he was in communication with someone. We know that he made a phone call just before he made the shot. There were different things that were being circulated and said, and even then, that is still all muddy. So as to who pulled the trigger is the least important thing right now. How the death is being used and what environment this has created is more important. Look at what we see with Jimmy Kimmel being censored and fired. Where what we saw was, now you have to lionize Charlie Kirk. You can't say anything bad about him or TP USA. And as a result, what happened was Jimmy Kimmel got his show pulled. And now I don't think there's anything that's going to replace that as of right now. And we're seeing other things too, where the Congress tried to pass a National Remembrance of Charlie Kirk Day, which I don't agree with. I don't think anybody should be killed for their political opinions, but I don't think this man did anything heroic or worth remembering, especially given some of his inflammatory statements. I think the way you combat those ideas is not by denouncing them, but by presenting your own. Anybody else had the right to go to a college campus and present their ideas. I've done that several times. Anybody else has the right to set up a table, set up a microphone, and discuss with college kids what you think. And anybody else has the right to debunk Charlie Kirk, to debate Charlie Kirk. They could have done this too. That's one solution in which I think if you disagree with somebody on political ideas, especially in this country, you now have a right, although you're losing it pretty quickly because free speech is under assault right now. You do have a right to go out and disagree with people and present your case. But how do you defend free speech at a time when you may not have it anymore? See, TikTok right now has created an algorithm, and my friend Guy Christensen, your favorite guy on TikTok, is having his videos removed and moderated and censored and deboosted because there is now a new TikTok platform coming in that's being controlled by Larry Ellison and Oracle, where they are now going to moderate and monitor pro-Israeli content. The only thing that we've seen that works to break through the algorithms, that breaks through the mold and the mainstream press, is interventions. People need to continue to do interventions because this creates a spectacle, especially when it's filmed right, big enough that people have no choice but to share it. That is how our interventions have gone viral. People chose to share it directly with their friends, and it beats the algorithm every time. And we need people intervening now more than ever. We need people standing up now more than ever. Therefore, I'm asking you to help me and stand with me. I'm looking to do demonstrations in front of the United Nations to honor the 275 journalists that have been killed so far in Gaza. And I'm going to need 550 people to come out and stand with me so that everybody can have one person to alleviate them if they need to step out of the line, holding up a picture of the journalists that have been killed. Not only that, our campaign is that of action. We are out in the streets trying to talk to people every week about who represents them and what a real solution looks like. You don't need a congressman who personally profits off the death of Palestinian children by investing in L3 Harris, Northrop Grumman, or Lockheed Martin. You don't deserve a congressman who's going to ignore the fact that you've lived in mold-infested apartments for over 20 years. You need a congressman. You need a president. You need a government that thinks bigger. I want there to be 10 new cities built within 10 years. I want our population to triple over the next 50 years. And I know we can make that happen. That's why I have the Space Civilian Construction Corps program to encourage immigration. Any young man or woman who's 18 to 26 years old can come to this country and get a training where they can get the vocational skills and the education needed to build a whole new city and maintain it. And as a result, also build a network of high-speed rail connecting these cities so that way someone who lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma can actually want to live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, knowing they could get to Houston or Austin or Dallas in a matter of an hour or less. That's how you can encourage people coming into these cities that are being built up. And that's how you can encourage immigrants who know that if they come here, they're guaranteed a job, skills, and education. That is the future of our country, and that will be the atonement when we send some of these workers and steel supplies over to Gaza to help rebuild it. That is the future that I'm fighting for with this campaign. And that's why we're out here doing what we do. So if you'd like to stay in touch with us, please join us at votevega.nyc. We just redid our website, so you can read some more of our policy. You can donate there, and you can sign up there, and I will contact you personally, or somebody will contact you personally. I want to thank you all, and I appreciate all the comments, and thank you all for tuning in. If you're wondering where is our Edgar Poe reading, they will resume not next week, but the week after. Our friend Dennis Speed is on a secret mission, and he wanted me to wish you all well, and that he will be back as soon as he can. So thank you.